This is a work of fiction. All characters, events, and military operations depicted are entirely fictional. The dog stops before I do. That is how it always works between us. Ghost reads the world a half-second faster than I can, and I have learned to trust the half-second. We are running the south perimeter, same as every night. Same boots, same trail worn into the frozen dirt behind the cabin. Same darkness that smells like pine sap and coming snow. 3 years of this. 3 years of walking the same ground until my footprints became part of it. Until the silence stopped feeling like absence and started feeling like architecture. Something I built. Something I earned. The cabin sits at the end of a logging track that the county forgot about sometime around the year I was born. No power lines, no mailbox, no address. I built it myself from timber I felled on the ridge and lumber I hauled in by truck before winter locked the road the first year. Solar panel on the south-facing slope charges a battery bank big enough for a radio I never turn on and a headlamp I rarely need. Water comes from the creek 60 yards east, filtered through a gravity system I designed with parachute cord and charcoal. Ghost drops low. Not the lazy alertness he gives to deer, or the annoyed rumble he reserves for raccoons tearing at the compost heap. This is different. His ears press forward, locked. His shoulders square beneath the black saddle of his coat, the fur rising along his spine in that slow wave that starts at the base of his skull and travels backward. The growl comes from somewhere deeper than his throat, from the place where instinct has not been bred out, only quieted. Fuss. He holds at my left knee, but does not relax. His nose tracks something south, toward the old logging road that cuts through the hardwoods a quarter mile below the ridge. Nobody uses that road. Nobody has used it in years. The ruts have filled with leaf litter, and the branches grow across the gap at head height, uncut, unclaimed. That is one of the reasons I chose this place. There are others. All of them point in the same direction, away from the world and everyone in it. I follow his line of sight. The trees are black columns against a sky bruised purple with late October moonlight. Nothing moves. But Ghost's body has not unlocked, and in 7 years I have never known him to be wrong. 7 years since specialist Danny Voss handed me a leash in the back of a C-130 and said the words that I have carried like a second dog tag ever since. Take care of Ghost for me. 3 weeks later, Danny came home under a flag, and Ghost and I became what we are now, the last 2 pieces of something that used to be whole. Bleib. He holds. I move ahead, stepping off the trail and into the tree line where the ground cover swallows sound. Old patterns return without invitation, weight on the balls of my feet, breathing shallow, arms loose. Every sense widened until the forest becomes a grid, and I am reading each square of it the way I was taught to read a sector of fire at Fort Bragg 2 decades and a lifetime ago. 20 years in Special Forces does not leave a man. It waits. It sits inside the muscle and the bone like a second language, and when the world shifts in a way the body recognizes before the mind does, it speaks. I see it before I understand it. Through the last stand of birch, where the logging road bends west toward the old mill site, something catches the moonlight. Metallic, angular, too large to be litter, too still to be alive. A shape that does not belong to the forest. a shape the forest has not yet learned to swallow. Something metallic catching the last of the moonlight through the trees. Behind me, ghost whines once. Short, tight, not fear. A question. I come at it from the east, using the tree line for cover. The approach is automatic. Clear the corners first, check underneath for anything that should not be there, scan the windows for movement or reflection. I have not cleared a vehicle in 4 years, but my hands remember the geometry. My hands remember everything. It is the rest of me that has been trying to forget. It is a cargo van, white once, now grayed by road film and neglect. No plates. The rear doors hang slightly open, one hinge bent as though someone left in a way that did not include patience. The cab is empty. No keys in the ignition. No registration on the visor. The windshield carries a crack that runs from the bottom left corner to the center. A single decisive line, thrown by a stone on a road that was never meant for this kind of vehicle. Ghost flanks right without being told. He moves low along the ditch, nose sweeping the ground in tight arcs. When he reaches the rear bumper, he does something I have not seen him do since he was young, since before Danny, since the months he spent at Lackland in the MWD program before they washed him for being too bonded to a single handler. He sits. Not a rest, a formal sit. Spine straight, ears at attention, eyes locked on the rear doors. The kind of sit a military working dog gives when it has found what it was trained to find. Such. He confirms, holding position, eyes on me. Whatever is in this van, his nose already knows it better than my eyes will. I pull the right door fully open. Inside, steel cages bolted to the floor. Heavy gauge, commercial grade, the kind built to hold weight and resist movement during transport. 3 of them arranged in a row, each one large enough for equipment cases or supply crates. The cages are empty now, but the bolts are bright, newer than the van, cross-threaded slightly, as if installed by someone who cared about speed more than craftsmanship. Plastic sheeting lines the floor beneath them, taped at the corners with black gorilla tape. A chemical smell rises. Not rot, not fuel. Something industrial. Solvents, maybe. Degreaser. Or the residue of something cleaned too quickly by someone who knew what they were removing, but not why it mattered that they missed a corner. Against the wall, a clipboard. Most of the pages have been torn free, not ripped in anger, removed with care, each perforation even, deliberate. But one remains, caught under the clip, overlooked or deemed unimportant. A manifest, partial, columns of serial numbers in a format I recognize. The prefix structure matches military standard equipment tracking, the kind I spent 20 years logging on transfer documents between fire bases. A company abbreviation, RLS. Destination codes I do not recognize. And a shipping route that traces a line through 3 states along rural highways and county roads. The last stop before the route disappears off the page is a town I do know. Iron Falls, 40 miles south of here. The town where I pick up my pension check from a post office box every other month. Where a woman named Ruth Halsey knows my name and my dog, but nothing else about me. And that is exactly how I built it. I fold the paper and put it in my jacket. At the front of the van, on the dashboard, a small black box the size of a deck of cards. A single LED blinks red. Slow. Patient. GPS transponder. Still active. Someone knows where this vehicle is, or was, or will check again soon. Ghost has not moved from his sit. He watches me with that expression I have come to know as verdict, not waiting for a command, offering an assessment. His ears are forward but relaxed. His body is still. His eyes say, "This is not ours." His eyes say, "You already know that." I know. I close the doors the way I found them, wipe the handle with my sleeve, and sweep the ground behind me with a branch of dead hemlock. Old habits, the kind that feel foolish until the morning they save your life. The kind a man learns in the mountains of eastern Afghanistan and carries home in his body like shrapnel in tissue. Too deep to remove, too present to ignore. We walk back to the cabin. Ghost ranges ahead, then returns, then ranges again. His patrol pattern, the figure 8 he runs when the world is not quite right. The moon has set. The darkness is total now, the kind that has weight. I should have left it, should have walked past. 3 years of leaving things alone, and the one time the dog told me to look, I looked. I do not sleep. I sit at the table I built from lumber I milled myself, and read the manifest by the light of a kerosene lamp that has not been cleaned since August. The paper smells like the van. Chemical, faintly sweet. Wrong. Serial numbers in 3 columns. Some in military standard format. I recognize the prefix structure from years of logging equipment transfers downrange. Optics. Communications components. Possibly weapons parts, though the codes are truncated. These are not consumer goods. These are defense items. Surplus stock, maybe, or diverted inventory from a supply chain long enough that a few crates could disappear at a junction and no one would notice for months. Inventory that normally moves through official channels with paper trails long enough to wallpaper a barracks. Unless someone decided to skip the paperwork and move it through 40 miles of forest on a road that does not exist on any map the government updates. RLS. 3 letters that mean nothing to me yet, and too much already. The shipping codes reference transfer points, highway junctions, county roads, unmarked pull-offs, the infrastructure of in-between, the geography of not being noticed. Ghost settles on the floor beside my chair. He rests his jaw on the edge of my boot and exhales. That long, slow release dogs give when they have decided, for now, that the world is still. His body is warm against my ankle. His breathing slows to that deep, even rhythm that used to keep me anchored in places where nothing else could. Forward operating bases where the rockets came at midnight. Patrol bases where the silence between contacts was worse than the contacts themselves. Because silence meant waiting, and waiting meant thinking, and thinking meant remembering, and remembering was where the damage lived. The cabin holds us. It has held us for 3 years. 1 room, 1 table, 1 chair, a cot against the wall, a wood stove that eats oak and gives back heat with the grudging efficiency of something that knows its value. I built all of it with my own hands, because there was a time, after I left the army, after the paperwork and the stone-faced board that told me I was unfit for continued service, as though 20 years and 7 deployments could be weighed on a scale and found wanting. There was a time when the only thing that kept me breathing was the act of building something that could not betray me. We had a good thing, Ghost. 3 years of nobody caring where we were. He blinks. One ear turns toward the window where the first light is beginning to thin the darkness. Frost on the glass. Leaves falling somewhere beyond the porch. I can hear them, dry and light, surrendering to a gravity they spent all summer resisting. The sound comes from memory, not the sky. But for a second I am back in the vehicle, the armored door still open, the dust thick enough to taste, looking through it at Fareed standing in the doorway of the compound, his son behind him. The boy's hand gripping the back of Fareed's shirt, the way a child grips the world when the world is the only thing between him and the dark. Fareed's face, not angry, not afraid, patient. The patience of a man who has been promised something by men with weapons and flags, and has built his family's survival on that promise, because there was nothing else to build on. You will come back for us, he said. I nodded. I did not speak because I knew what the nod meant, and I knew what the truth was, and they were not the same thing. The convoy was moving. My team sergeant was on the radio. The word came down the chain. Clean, passive, final. We are leaving. Leaving is a word the Army uses, like surgeons use procedure. It makes the cutting sound clinical. I didn't. 6 weeks later, the message came through a contact at the embassy. Fareed, his boy, 14 years old. I filed a formal complaint through channels I no longer believed in, and channels I no longer believed in answered as they always do, slowly, bureaucratically, and with a silence that sounded exactly like permission. Ghost shifts. His nose presses harder against my boot. 80 pounds of loyalty that never asked me to explain why I stopped deserving it. His eyes are open, watching me with that patience dogs carry like a lantern, steady, warm, unearned. The only promise I hadn't broken. The south tripwire triggers at 3:47 in the afternoon. I know the time because I've kept military time my entire adult life, and I checked my watch before I checked the perimeter. Because a man who knows when something happened can work backward to what happened, and a man who knows what happened can work forward to what comes next. Sequence, pattern, prediction. The holy trinity of unconventional warfare, taught to me by a master sergeant at Bragg, who smelled like Skoll and spoke like a philosopher, and died in a place the government still will not name. Ghost is already at the fence line, body rigid, tail straight, nose aimed at the tree break 40 meters south. Fuss. He comes to heel, but keeps his head turned toward the trees. The muscles in his shoulders bunch and release in that rapid cycle I know as the space between alertness and action. The same space I live in. The space where decision waits. I check the wire first. Not snapped. triggered. Something pressed against it hard enough to pull the tin cans from the branch where I hung them 14 months ago. I crouch and read the ground. Boot print. Left foot, pressed deep at the heel, shallow at the toe. A deliberate heel-to-toe roll. The kind you learn when someone teaches you to walk quietly through terrain that wants to announce you. The spacing is even. 28 inches, maybe 30. Straight line, no wandering, no pause marks, no deviation for roots or rocks. Whoever was here knew where he was going and did not stop to consider the path because he had already walked it in his mind before his body arrived. I have walked like that. I have taught men to walk like that. In countries where the sound of a misplaced step was the difference between an ambush sprung and an ambush survived. This is military training, or private military training, which is the same animal wearing a different collar. Ghost tracks the scent trail east along the fence line, past the woodpile where I split oak on Tuesdays and Fridays, one of the rituals that keep the structure in a life that has no external structure left. Past the rain barrel, past the stump where I sit in the evenings and watch the light leave the valley without asking it to stay. He stops at the clearing where the dirt road meets the open ground, and my truck sits under the oak like a patient animal waiting to be useful. I do not have to look, but I look anyway. The brake line has been cut, not torn by road debris, not frayed by age or cold. Cut. Clean, precise, with a tool designed for the task. A cable cutter or a flush-cut plier. Someone crawled under my truck and severed the only reliable way I have to reach the world beyond this ridge. And they did it while I was inside, reading a manifest that was never meant for my eyes. I stand up. The math arranges itself without effort. Automatic, immediate. The same arithmetic that saved lives in Helmand and measured distance in Kunar, and here, now, measures something quieter and more personal. 40 miles to Iron Falls. No vehicle, no phone, no cell coverage even if I had a phone, which I do not, because I threw the last one into a river in Indiana 3 years ago and watched it sink and felt nothing except the specific relief of a man cutting a wire that the world used to find him. The logging road south connects to the county highway, but anyone who planned this would know that, and anyone who cut a brake line this cleanly is not improvising. They are executing. The difference between the two is the difference between rain and irrigation. One happens to you. The other is done to you. Assess, plan, execute. I say it to myself, but Ghost's ears flick as though the words still carry rank. He is waiting for a command, because that is what partners do when the situation shifts. They hold position and wait for the man with the map. Danny used to say Ghost could read a terrain model better than half the team. Danny used to say a lot of things, back when Danny was alive, and words meant what they said, and promises were not yet the fragile things I now knew them to be. I go inside, pack the bag I have never unpacked, the go bag beneath the cot, the one I told myself I kept out of habit, but kept out of knowledge. Knowledge that the world does not let a man disappear forever. It only lets him believe he has. 30 minutes. Water. Food for 3 days. First aid kit. Sutures. gauze, hemostatic agent, ibuprofen, the supplies of a man who has learned that damage comes and you meet it with what you carry. Flare gun, binoculars, the K-bar I carried through 7 deployments and 23 countries and have not cleaned once since I left the service, because the ritual of cleaning it is the one ritual I could not separate from the men I cleaned it beside. Ghost's lead, an extra layer for the cold that comes at elevation. His bowl, his food. They knew where I lived. They knew what I drove. The only thing they didn't know was that I'd spent 20 years learning how to disappear. I do not run. Running is for men who have lost the advantage and are trying to replace it with distance. I have not lost the advantage because I have not yet given it away. Instead, I move, north and east, up the ridge, off trail, through the deadfall where the ground is too broken for clean tracking and the undergrowth is thick enough to swallow a man and a dog without leaving a seam. Ghost ranges ahead in silence. I gave him bribe once at the cabin, and he has not made a sound since. 7 years of trust compressed into a single German word, and the understanding that follows it, an understanding built not in training, but in the 1,000 quiet hours between, when it was just him and me, and the slow work of learning what the other one needed without being told. We reached the first hide site at dusk. I built it 14 months ago, cut into the slope behind a natural screen of white pine, reinforced with deadfall, covered with a layer of forest debris thick enough to break a thermal signature. Not because I expected to need it, because a man trained in unconventional warfare builds caches the way other men build savings accounts. Against a future he hopes will never arrive, but prepares for with the same discipline he brings to everything. Because discipline is the last wall between a man and the chaos that lives on the other side of it. The position is good. High ground, 1,500 meters above the cabin, screened by pine cover thick enough to break a sightline from any approach on the valley floor. I can see the cabin, the clearing, the dead truck under the oak, the dirt road winding south through the hardwoods. 2 escape routes, north along the ridge toward Crownland, east into the ravine that feeds the creek. Ghost settles beside me, his body pressed against my thigh. His warmth is the only warmth that exists in my world tonight. His breathing slows. His chin rests on my knee. And for a moment, just a moment, the world is the size of the 2 of us. And that is enough. They come at 2200, 2 of them, moving from the south trail in a staggered formation, 1 forward, 1 offset right, 5 meters between them. Textbook approach on a fixed position with unknown threat level. They wear dark clothing, muted tones, nothing reflective, no flashlights. When the lead man pauses at the tree line, I catch the faint green luminance of a night vision monocular flipping up from his face as he transitions from the woods to the clearing where ambient light is sufficient. NVG. Comms headset on the second man, low profile, a single earpiece with a boom mic tucked against the jaw, the kind you wear when you expect to talk to someone other than the man beside you. A handler, a coordinator, a man in a vehicle somewhere along the county road with a laptop and a coffee and the comfortable distance of command. These are not hunters. These are not hikers lost in the wrong woods. These are operators. Private sector, contracted, equipped with gear that costs more than most people in Iron Falls make in a month. The kind of men who do not exist on paper and are paid specifically to keep it that way. They enter the cabin. I watch through binoculars as flashlight beams cut across the windows in systematic sweeps, left to right, room by room, the pattern of men who have been taught to clear spaces and have done it enough to stop thinking about the teaching. Professional, efficient. 3 minutes inside. They will find the table, the manifest I did not leave behind, the cot with the shape of a man still pressed into the blanket, the cold wood stove, the bowl on the floor where Ghost ate his last meal here. They will find the ghost of a life that stepped out of its own frame and vanished. When they come out, the lead man stands in the doorway and speaks into a radio. I cannot hear the words at this distance, but his body tells me everything. He shifts his weight from left foot to right. Not agitation, recalculation. He looks at the truck. He walks to it, crouches, confirms the brake line. Then he stands and looks at the tree line. His posture says frustrated. His posture says the asset he expected to find is not where the models predicted it would be. Ghost's body is rigid against mine. Every muscle locked beneath the fur, the tension running through him like current through a wire. But he does not move, does not whine, does not breathe louder than the wind allows. His training and mine fused into a single shared stillness. He is trembling, not from fear, from restraint. The effort of being quiet when every nerve in his body is saying otherwise. The second man walks the perimeter. He checks the tripwires, the ones I left intact, the ones that have served their purpose and now serve another. Evidence of a man who expected visitors. Evidence of a mind that plans. He crouches at the south fence line. He reads the ground the way I read it, and I can see in the tilt of his head that he is finding what I found and adding to it what I did not want him to find. The direction I left. North. Toward the ridge. Toward the pines. Toward the position where I am lying with my dog pressed against my ribs and my breath held behind my teeth and 30 meters of darkness and forest and gravity between us. He stands, turns, scans north with the NVG flipped back down. His body goes still. Not the stillness of a man who has found something. The stillness of a man who can feel something he cannot see. He couldn't see me. I knew that. The pine screen was too thick, the angle too steep, the distance too far for any optic short of a thermal, and he was carrying a light amplification monocular, not thermal. He could not see me. But the way he paused, that was the pause of a man who could feel something watching him. I have stood in that pause. I have been on both sides of it, in countries where the dark was not empty, and both of us knew it. After 30 seconds, he turned and rejoined the lead man. They moved south. They did not look back. But they did not need to, because looking back was the work of men who doubted, and these men did not doubt. They knew I was out here. They just did not know where. And the difference between those two things was the only advantage I had left. We move at first light. Not south toward the cabin. That is theirs now, occupied not by their bodies, but by their knowledge of it. East, then south, through the ravine where the creek runs shallow over limestone and the water covers our tracks. Ghost wades through it without complaint, though the cold makes him lift his paws higher than usual. A small, dignified protest that makes him look like a horse crossing a stream in a painting. 8 miles to Iron Falls, through terrain that does not appear on any commercial map because it is too broken, too thick, too useless to anyone except a man who does not want to be found and a dog who does not care about maps. I need information. The manifest gave me a name, RLS, and a route. The route ends here, or passes through here, and I need to know which, because passes through means I can let it go, and ends here means I cannot. Iron Falls is not a town in any way the census would recognize. It is an agreement between geography and stubbornness. 200 people scattered across a valley where the iron mines went dark in the 70s, and nothing replaced them except silence. The deep, permanent silence that follows industry like ash follows fire. A gas station that sells bait in summer and firewood in winter. A church with a steeple that leans 3 degrees east and a congregation that has learned to lean with it. A post office the size of a living room, run by a woman who has been sorting other people's lives into the right boxes for 31 years. Morning, Mrs. Halsey. She looks up from behind the counter. 63 years old, thin in the way that suggests a life of work rather than worry. Silver hair pinned back with a clip that has not been fashionable since the Reagan administration. Her eyes move to Ghost first. They always do. Something in her face softens, the way it does for children and animals, the 2 categories of being she trusts without asking for documentation. Well, there he is. Come here, handsome. Ghost approaches the counter with his ears half forward and his tail moving in the slow, measured wag he reserves for people who have earned it. She reaches over the counter and scratches behind his right ear with a hand that knows exactly where dogs keep their secrets. I need to use the computer if it's not busy. She gives me a look that says the computer has not been busy since it was installed in 2014. Help yourself. Password still taped to the monitor. The computer sits in the corner on a desk that was built for a typewriter. It hums with the labored patience of a machine asked to do things it was not designed for, in a place it did not expect to end up. I know the feeling. CURES Ridgeline Solutions. The website is clean, professional, and says almost nothing. Defense consulting, logistics services, strategic support. A stock photograph of men in polos shaking hands across a conference table that could be anywhere and therefore is nowhere. Registered in Arlington, Virginia. No names on the leadership page. No personnel directory. No physical office listed beyond a suite number. A corporate presence built to appear on a background check and disappear under scrutiny. But the manifest tells a different story. The shipping route threads through rural Michigan, not highways, not interstates, but county roads and forest access routes and forgotten infrastructure connecting places no one visits to places no one watches. Through territory where a cargo van on a logging road would never be questioned because there is no one to question it. Mrs. Halsey. She does not look up from her sorting. 3 months ago. Anybody new come through here? She pauses. Her hands stop moving on the envelopes, which is how I know the question landed somewhere real. Because Ruth Halsey's hands never stop unless her mind has found something worth holding. A crew, 6, maybe 7 men, rented old Murdoch's land up north of the ridge. Said they were doing a forestry survey. Paid cash, 3 months in advance. Drove trucks that were too clean for the roads they said they were driving. Forestry survey. That's what they said. She resumes sorting, but the rhythm is different now. Faster, urgent, as if she wants the conversation to end, not because she is bored of it, but because she is afraid of where it leads. Ghost's head snaps toward the window. His body drops half an inch. That compressed readiness I have seen 1,000 times in 7 years and 7 countries and 100 moments when the distance between calm and catastrophe was measured in inches and heartbeats. A truck passes the post office. Dark paint, clean, unmarked. A truck that belongs to someone who wants to move through a town without being remembered by it. It does not stop. But Ghost tracks it through the window, his head turning with the sound, his body locked until the engine fades beyond the gas station and the silence fills back in like water in a hole. Easy. He looks at me. I look at him. We understand the same thing, the way we always do, without language, without gesture, through the shared grammar of years spent reading the world for things that do not belong in it. Mrs. Halsey watches us both with the quiet attention of a woman who has spent 3 decades reading the distance between what people say and what they carry. She has never asked me where I served. She has never asked why a man my age lives alone in the woods with a German shepherd and a post office box, and a past he wears like a coat he cannot take off, even in summer. You be careful out there, Mr. Merritt. I nod. I want to tell her something, that she is the only person on this earth besides a dog who calls me by name. That her voice is the only human voice I have heard in weeks that does not live in memory. That the simple act of sorting mail into boxes, the quiet faith that things will arrive where they are meant to go, is the closest thing to belief I have witnessed since I stopped believing in the systems that were supposed to deliver on promises made in dust and blood, and the specific, terrible hope of a man named Fareed who trusted me to be better than I was. I do not tell her any of this. I nod again and open the door, and the bell rings, and Ghost follows me out into the thin cold of an October morning that does not care what I have found or what is looking for me. Forestry survey. 3 months. That was exactly when the logging road started showing fresh tire tracks I never bothered to trace because I was too busy disappearing to notice the world assembling itself around me. She steps out from behind a stand of birch 20 yards ahead and draws on me in one motion. Badge on her belt, sidearm leveled, stance wide, weight centered. Not new at this. Don't move. Ghost drops. His lips pull back, and a sound comes out of him I have not heard in a long time. Not alarm. Promise. His weight shifts forward onto his front legs, and his ears pin flat, and he is no longer an old dog on a walk. He is what he was born to be, what Danny trained him to be, what the program at Lackland tried to break out of him, and could not. Fuss. Easy. He holds, barely. His eyes stay fixed on her, and the tension in his shoulders says everything his silence does not. I put my hand on his back, palm flat, fingers spread. The signal we have used for 7 years. I am here. We are not fighting this one. She is mid-30s, lean, dark brown hair pulled back into a low knot that has come loose on the left side where the wind has been working on it all morning. Park Service uniform under a dark green shell jacket. USFS badge, gold, clipped to her belt, beside a radio and a set of flex cuffs. Her boots are worn in at the heels and caked with the gray mud from the creek crossings south of here. Her face is sharp, high cheekbones, a mouth set in a line that does not invite negotiation, eyes the color of creek water over stone. They do not leave mine. Turn around, hands where I can see them. I raise my hands, slow, palms out, fingers spread. I turn my shoulder toward her so the pack on my back is visible and the K-bar on my hip is not hidden. I do not reach for it. I do not speak. I let her see me, and I let the seeing do the work. In 20 years of operating in places where misunderstanding cost lives, I learned one thing about human beings. They trust what they can read more than what they are told. She closes the distance, 10 yards, stops. Her eyes move from my face to my hands, to the dog, to the pack, and back to my face. She reads the whole picture in 3 seconds. I watch her process it. The pack says prepared. The knife says capable. The dog says bonded. The hands say, I am choosing not to resist. And the choice is more instructive than compliance, because compliance is easy, and choice requires assessment. You're armed. I'm always armed. That's not reassuring. It wasn't meant to be. Her weapon stays level, but something in her stance shifts. Not softer, recalibrated. She has looked at me long enough to recognize what she is seeing. The posture, the calm, the discipline of stillness under threat. She has seen it before, on men who carry their training in their skeleton. You're not poaching. No. Then what are you doing in my forest? Living. One word. It lands between us and sits there. She holds it for a beat, then tilts her head half an inch. A question she does not ask out loud, because she already knows the answer would be longer than this moment can hold. Name's Green Beret. I've been on this ridge 3 years. Cabin off the old logging track, north end. Her eyes narrow, not suspicion, recognition. The cabin with no mailbox. I've seen it on my maps. No permit, no lease, no record of occupation since the mining company pulled out in '83. No trouble either, until recently. Ghost has not relaxed, but his body has changed. His ears have rotated from threat forward to something I do not have a word for. He watches her. Then he looks at me. Then he watches her again. His tail moves once, just once, low and slow. In 7 years, 3 countries, and 100 encounters with strangers, Ghost has never offered that signal to anyone who was not already part of us. Not for the medics at the VA who tried to take his blood. Not for Mrs. Halsey, who feeds him biscuits through the post office window. Not for anyone except Danny, who raised him, and me, who carried him home. I notice. I file it away. Ghost reads people better than I do. He always has. Whatever he sees in this woman, with a badge and a weapon, and the posture of someone who has been exiled to the same forest I chose as my prison, he has decided it deserves one wag of his tail. What's your name? Nora Calloway, USFS Law Enforcement. And you still haven't told me what you're doing walking through federal land with a K-bar and a German Shepherd and a pack that says you're not planning on going home tonight. Ridgeline Solutions. You know the name? Her weapon lowers 2 inches. Not holstered, not forgotten, but lowered. Her jaw tightens, and something moves behind her eyes. Not surprise, confirmation. The kind of recognition that comes when a suspicion you have carried alone for weeks is spoken aloud by a stranger, and suddenly the weight of it becomes real. I've been trying to figure out what they're actually doing for 2 months. You found something, didn't you? We approach the van from the west. Nora leads. Her training is different from mine, but the bones are the same. She moves with her weapon drawn, checking angles, reading the ground the same careful way I read it 3 nights ago. I follow with ghost at heel, watching the tree line behind us because someone has to watch the door we came through. When did you find it? 3 nights ago. And you took what? 1 page from a manifest. Serial numbers, shipping codes, company abbreviation. RLS. She stops walking, turns, studies my face with the kind of attention I associate with interrogation rooms and border crossings. You took a document from an active scene. Didn't know it was a scene. Thought it was a van someone left in the woods. Nobody leaves a van in the woods. I know that now. She turns back. We keep moving. The van is where I left it. Same position, same angle. Same broken hinge on the right rear door. But something has changed. The clipboard is gone. The remaining manifest page I left behind has been collected. The plastic sheeting on the floor has been repositioned and taped with fresh strips. The edges sharper, the corners tighter. Someone has been here since I was. They came to clean, not to collect. They came because they knew what I had seen, and they wanted to make sure the next person who looked would find nothing. Nora pulls on a pair of nitrile gloves from her jacket pocket. She moves through the van with the focused patience of someone who has processed scenes before and understands that evidence lives in details, and details live in the spaces people forget to scrub. Hands steady, eyes methodical. She checks the cages, runs a finger along the bolt threads, photographs the floor with her phone. Photographs the tape seams, photographs the chemical staining that bleach has faded but not erased. Then she goes to the cab. There. She is holding a small black box, smaller than the GPS transponder I saw on the dashboard. This one was behind the dash panel, mounted to the bracket with zip ties and positioned to face the rear compartment through a pinhole gap in the plastic trim. A single lens on the front face. A motion sensor. Battery? She checks. Still active. Passive infrared. Triggers on heat signature within 3 meters. This isn't surveillance footage. It's a tripwire. It logs when someone enters the vehicle and how long they stay. It's a trap. She looks at me. I look at the sensor. The math builds itself, and I do not want to see the sum because the sum means I have made a mistake, and I have spent 20 years in a profession where mistakes are measured in bodies. A van placed on a road that nobody uses, near a position that nobody knows about, in a forest that nobody watches. Papers left visible enough to reward curiosity. A GPS transponder blinking red on the dashboard, obvious, distracting, pulling attention forward while the real device sits behind the panel, invisible, patient, counting. 3 nights ago, I opened this door. I stood inside this van for 6 minutes. I touched the manifest. I breathed the chemical air, and the sensor recorded all of it. Not my face, not my name, my presence, my heat, my time of arrival, 2,247. My time of departure, 2,253. The direction of my approach, east. The direction of my exit, north. Everything a professional team needs to begin a hunt. They didn't lose this van, Nora says. Her voice is level, but her hands have stopped moving, and her eyes have gone hard and focused. They left it. Bait. For whoever was living on that ridge. She sets the sensor on the dashboard and stares at it. They knew someone was out here. Drone footage maybe, trail camera, satellite thermal. I don't know how, but they knew. And they didn't know who you were or what you'd do about it. This van tells them both. Ghost stands at the rear of the van. He has not entered. His ears are flat, pressed back tight against his skull, and his body is low, and his tail is tucked. And he does not look at the interior. He looks at the tree line. He remembers this place. His memory works differently from mine. No names, no dates, no sequence. Just scent and sensation, and the body's record of what felt wrong. 3 days ago, he sat here and performed a trained alert, and the world was still manageable. Now he stands here and will not sit, and the world has changed, and he knows it. Smart dog. The recon team at my cabin. 2 men. Night vision. Comms. They dispatched after the sensor pinged. Standard response. Identify the subject. Assess the threat level. Report. Yes. Then they already know you found it. They already know you ran. They know your cabin is empty and your truck is disabled. And you are somewhere in this forest with provisions and a dog and the kind of training they probably weren't expecting. And they know I'm out here now too, because if they're running aerial surveillance for their staging area, they've mapped every patrol route I've taken in 2 months. Ghost presses his flank against my knee. A single point of contact. Warm, steady, silent. His body says what my body cannot say, and what my mouth refuses to form. We are tired. We are scared. We are standing in a trap we walked into 3 days ago, and are only now beginning to see the edges of. How long before your next check-in with your district? Nora checks her radio, turns it over. The display is dim, but readable. 48 hours. And if you don't report? They send someone. Field supervisor, maybe county sheriff for backup. Standard protocol for a missed check-in on a solo patrol. 48 hours is a long time in the woods. I take her to the second hide site. Not the one near the cabin. That position is compromised by proximity and by knowledge. This one is deeper, farther north, cut into a shelf of granite above a drainage that feeds the main creek. I built it last spring after a week of rain when the boredom was worse than the cold, and I needed something to do with my hands that was not remembering. Digging. framing, covering. The simple, repetitive labor of building a thing that has purpose, but no audience. A shelter for one man and one dog against a future that might never arrive. Walk in the water. Stay on the stones. She follows without asking why. Good. Questions slow people down in terrain and speed them up in conversation, and right now we need the opposite of both. Ghost moves ahead. 30 meters. He runs point without a command because he knows the position and he knows what it means. Nose low, ears rotating in quarter turns, sampling the air in all directions. Every 3 minutes he stops, lifts his head, reads the wind, and continues. Scout work. The purest version of what he was bred for, and the part of his training that survived the wash and the transfers and the long years after, because instinct does not care about paperwork. He's trained. He was, once. MWD? Started the program at Lackland. Washed out. Too bonded. They wanted a dog that could transfer handlers. Ghost doesn't transfer. A buddy of mine kept him private. When my buddy died, I took over. She watches him navigate the creek bed, picking his route around the deeper pools with the careful deliberation of an animal who understands consequences. Placing his paws on the stones without slipping, his balance adjusted for the current, his body low and efficient. 7 years old, and his instincts are still sharp enough to draw blood. His joints are stiffer in the cold mornings now. He favors his right hip on steep descents. His muzzle has gone gray around the edges. He does not know this, or he knows and refuses to negotiate with it. Either way, he moves forward. He has never moved in any other direction. The hide site is small. Room for 2 people and a dog if none of them need personal space, which none of us do anymore. I pull the cover aside. Deadfall layered over a frame of birch poles, insulated with packed leaves and a sheet of plastic I salvaged from a collapsed hunting blind 2 ridges east. Inside, a ground cloth, a rolled tarp, 2 MREs I stashed and forgot about, and a water filter still sealed in plastic. Seer training? Seer. Plus 20 years of building things I hoped I'd never need. She sits across from me. The space between us is 4 feet and filled with silence. Ghost lies across the entrance, chin on his paws, watching the creek below. Guard position. He chose it himself, the way he chooses everything. Not because I tell him, because he knows where the door is, and he knows what comes through doors. You said you've been watching Ridgeline for 2 months. Not watching, tracing. I got transferred here 8 months ago from Montana. Officially a lateral move. Unofficially, a punishment. She pauses. Her fingers pull at a loose thread on her glove. I reported my supervisor for burying evidence on a poaching ring. The ring was connected to a commercial outfit running guided hunts on federal land. The outfit had donors. The donors had contacts in the regional office. I won the investigation. Lost everything else. And Ridgeline? 3 months into my posting, I started finding inconsistencies. Timber cutting in areas with no active permits. Equipment staging on access roads that aren't logged in the patrol database. Fresh gravel laid on forest roads that haven't been maintained since the 90s. And then, one of my trail cameras picked up a convoy. 4 vehicles, no markings, moving north at 0200 on a route that doesn't connect to anything on the official maps. The logging roads. They've been using them for at least 3 months. Whatever they're moving, it comes in from the south, stages somewhere on that ridge, and disappears. I filed 2 reports. Both came back marked insufficient evidence for further action. Both were filed before anyone from my district office set foot on the ground. Someone doesn't want this found. Someone doesn't want this questioned. I know where it stages. She looks at me. The van. One of them. Maybe more. Ghost shifts at the entrance. His ear turns north and holds there for 5 seconds before releasing. A sound too far for us. Close enough for him. He does not alert. He holds the information the way a good operator holds intel. Cataloged. Filed. Ready. How many men came to your cabin? 2. Recon. Professional. NVG. Comms. Tactical movement. They're not amateurs. When will they send more? Already have. The question is, how many and how far behind? Both of us hear it. Faint, filtered through a mile of forest, distorted by terrain. A vehicle on the county road or on one of the access routes. Could be nothing. Could be a logger. Could be a hunter. Ghost's head lifts and his nostrils flare and his body tenses and his ears rotate south and lock. It is not nothing. We need to move before dark, Nora says. Not yet. Why? Because they expect us to move. Running is what they're built to handle. If we run, we're on their schedule. We watch first. We understand the pattern. Then we choose where to go and when. She looks at me. You've done this before. Not here. Where? I do not answer. Ghost rests his chin on his paws and closes his eyes. And for a moment, he looks like nothing more than an old dog sleeping in the shade. Ordinary. Peaceful. And the distance between what he looks like and what he is fills the shelter with a truth I have carried for 3 years and have never said aloud to anyone. Why did you stay out here? She asks. Her voice has changed. Lower. Slower. The professional edge filed down to something more human. 3 years. Alone. Ghost lies between us. His breathing has slowed. One ear still tracks the wind. The other rests flat. His body is a bridge between her question and my answer, and he does not know it. Because I got tired of leaving people behind. I count 6. They arrive at 0740, just as the light reaches the canopy, and the forest shifts from gray to green. 2 vehicles, a dark SUV and a pickup with a canopy, both clean, both without markings or plates visible from this distance. They park at the trailhead where the logging road meets the county highway, half a mile south of my cabin. The doors open together, coordinated, rehearsed. 4 new operators, heavier equipment, 2 carry packs with external antenna housings, the kind used for mesh communications networks that work under canopy, where standard radios lose line of sight. One has a long gun in a drag bag slung across his back. The 4th carries a Pelican case large enough for a drone, or a portable thermal imaging unit. Combined with the 2 from the first night, that puts 6 men on the ground in a forest I have lived in alone for 36 months. 6 men and 1 dog and 1 woman with a badge, and the silence of trees and rock and sky. And the math says that silence is ending. From our position above the drainage, I glass each man through the binoculars. Military bearing on all of them. The gear check is synchronized. They form a loose perimeter while the vehicles are unloaded. 2 men facing outward, 2 working, switching without verbal command. Private military. The kind of men who train together and deploy together and trust each other because trust is cheaper than communication. Ghost is on his belly beside me, his coat blending with the fallen leaves. He watched the vehicles arrive without moving, without sound. But now his focus has shifted. 1 man stands apart from the others. He stays near the SUV, a phone to his ear, then a map spread on the hood. Tall, early 40s, dark jacket, fitted, no creases. His posture says officer. His bearing says command. But something sits wrong. I have spent 20 years reading command in other men's bodies. 20 years watching officers lead and fail and lead again. And I learned to distinguish between authority that is grown from within and authority that is applied from above. This man has the second kind. The kind you put on in the morning and take off at night. Power without investment. Rank without cost. This is the one who decides. He folds the map, points north, speaks into his radio. The team forms up. 2-man elements, spaced 50 meters, angling north and east along the ridge. Grid search, methodical, patient. The kind of search pattern you run when you know the subject is in the area and you have enough men and enough time and enough certainty that patience will pay more than speed. 6 operators, Nora says beside me. She has her own binoculars pressed to her face. Her voice is low, controlled, but I can hear the edge in it. The sound of a calculation completing, and the answer being worse than expected. That's a lot of resources for a forestry survey. It's a lot of resources for anything legal. I calculate grid search speed in this terrain, given the undergrowth, the deadfall, the elevation changes, and the drainage crossings, is roughly 400 meters per hour per element in daylight. 2 elements advancing north in parallel means they cover an 800-meter wide strip every 60 minutes. Our hide site sits 5 kilometers north of the trailhead. At this pace, accounting for terrain and breaks and the inevitable slowdowns at creek crossings, they reach our position in 12 to 14 hours. Sunrise to midnight. Less if they find sign. Less if they brought the drone up. We can't stay here. Where? Fire tower, 5 miles north. Abandoned since the 90s. High ground, visibility in every direction. Only 2 approach routes, both of them exposed for the last 100 meters. You want to go higher? I want terrain they can't sweep without exposing themselves. Down here, we're in their grid. Up there, they're in mine. Ghost's head lifts. His nose rotates toward the west. A wind shift, carrying scent from the advancing team through the drainage and up the slope to our position. His growl returns, low and constant, vibrating through his chest and into the ground, and his eyes fix on a point in the trees below us where the first element will appear within the hour. He has identified the primary threat. Not the closest man, not the nearest movement. The one at the SUV. The one with the map and the radio and the jacket that does not belong in these woods. Ghost marks the apex predator. He always has. Danny said once that Ghost could smell rank. Not the smell, the weight of it. I see him too. We pack in 4 minutes. I have timed it because timing is a discipline, and discipline is a wall, and walls are what a man builds when the world outside them is less organized than the world within. We move north. Ghost runs point. Nora follows. I take the rear and watch the forest close behind us, swallowing our trail, covering our tracks with the indifferent patience of a world that does not care which of us survives. 6 hours, 5 miles, and the man at the SUV has already started his clock. We move through the dark. Nora is quiet. She has learned quickly, faster than most of the indigenous soldiers I trained in Helmand, and I trained men who had been surviving in hostile terrain since before they could read. Her steps are shorter now, her weight lower, her breathing controlled through her nose. She places her feet where I place mine, and does not ask why. Ghost runs 0.30 meters ahead, a shadow among shadows, and every few minutes he pauses, and I wait for the signal. Ears forward, hold. Ears relaxed, clear. The terrain steepens. Rock outcrops break through the forest floor in uneven shelves of granite. Old stone, exposed by decades of erosion. The ravine narrows, and the creek below sounds louder, closer. The temperature has dropped since sunset. My breath fogs in the beam of moonlight that cuts through the canopy. Ghost's does too. 2 miles from the fire tower, maybe less. Ghost stops. His ears come forward, his body drops, but not alarm. He holds for 3 seconds, reads the wind, then releases and moves on. Wind. Just wind. The forest is full of sounds that mean nothing and sounds that mean everything, and the difference between them is measured in years of learning, not seconds of listening. 1 mile. The ground levels briefly before the final climb. The fire tower sits on a granite knob at the crest of the ridge, a steel skeleton against the sky, abandoned since the Forest Service replaced it with satellite monitoring in the 90s. I have climbed it 11 times in 3 years. Sat on the platform, looked out over 100 miles of forest, and felt nothing except the specific comfort of altitude, of distance, of being above a world I no longer wanted to walk through. Ghost is 10 meters ahead when it happens. He is moving through a gap between 2 deadfalls, nose low, body smooth, the fluid motion of a dog who trusts the ground under his feet. And then his body lurches. A sharp, involuntary jerk to the right. His front legs buckle. He goes sideways into the deadfall, and a sound comes out of him that I have never heard before in 7 years. Not a bark, not a yelp. A cut-off cry, bitten down, crushed into silence by 7 years of training that says, you do not make noise when noise means death. Ghost. I am on him in 4 seconds, covering the 10 meters without thought, without caution, without any of the discipline I have spent 20 years perfecting, because the sound he made unmade all of it. My hands find him in the dark, his shoulder, wet, warm, steel cable, thin gauge, maybe 16, stretched between two trees at knee height, angled slightly downward, tight enough to cut, positioned to catch anything moving at speed through the gap. Not a trap for animals. Animals do not move in straight lines between deadfalls at 0-200. This wire was set for a human, or for anything traveling with a human. The PMC advanced faster than I calculated. The wire is not defensive. It is a perimeter line. They have already reached this position. They are already ahead of us. Hey, I got you. I pull the field kit from the side pocket of my pack. Gauze, hemostatic agent, headlamp on red filter, held between my teeth because both hands are needed, and will be needed, and cannot shake. Not now. The cut is deep. 3 inches across the top of his left shoulder, through the fur and the skin, and into the muscle beneath. The deltoid. A clean lateral slice. Bleeding steady, but not pulsing, not arterial. The wire sliced through him, and he kept moving, and the momentum took him sideways, and he did not cry out until he hit the ground. 7 years, boy. Not yet. I pack the wound. Hemostatic granules first, then gauze, then pressure. Firm, even. His body shakes under my hands. His breathing is rapid and shallow, and his eyes are wide, the whites visible in the red glow of my headlamp. And he looks at me with the expression that breaks everything I thought I had already finished breaking. Not pain, not fear. Trust. Absolute, unquestioning trust. The look of a creature who believes that the hands on his body will fix what is wrong, because those hands have always fixed what is wrong, and the weight of that belief is heavier than anything I have ever carried. He does not fight me. He does not pull away. He lies still and lets me work. 7 years of this. 7 years of him trusting me with his body, and me trusting him with my life. And the debts have been running parallel, and tonight they intersect on a frozen ridgeline with steel cable and blood, and the specific, terrible knowledge that I cannot lose him. Not because he is a dog, because he is the last proof that I am still capable of keeping something alive. Cade? Nora's voice, behind me, close, then not close. I hear movement in the trees to the south. Boots, not hers, heavier, faster. A flashlight beam cuts through the canopy 50 meters south and sweeps east in a deliberate arc. They advanced through the night. Faster than my estimate, which means they had better terrain intel than I assumed. Or they brought the drone up after dark and mapped our route from above. The wire was not a random placement. It was a perimeter line around the approach to the fire tower. They anticipated our destination. They are already there. Cade, there's a man on the trail between us, 40 meters south. Her voice is calm, controlled, professionally flat, but the information is not. An operator between her position and mine. She cannot cross to me without entering his sight line. I cannot go to her without leaving Ghost. 2 people separated by 40 meters of dark forest, and 1 trained man with a flashlight and a radio, and the authority to do whatever the man at the SUV has told him to do. Go around, west, through the creek bed. Take the drainage north. I'll meet you at the tower. I'm not leaving you here. You're not leaving. You're flanking. A beat. She does not want to go. I hear it in her breathing, in the shift of her weight on the gravel. Then she moves. West. Through the undergrowth. Quiet. The sound of her departure is the sound of a decision made against instinct. And I respect it, because I have made that decision 100 times, and it never gets easier. I am alone with Ghost. He is breathing fast. His nose is pushed into my palm, wet and cold and alive. His blood is on my hands. It is warm, and it is real, and it smells like iron and like the specific chemistry of a living body doing what living bodies do when they are opened. And it smells like every other wound I have packed in 20 years of war and 3 years of peace. And the truth is, there is no difference. Blood is blood. Pain is pain. The only variable is whether the creature beneath your hands trusts you to stop the bleeding. The sound is not real. It lives in my chest, not in the sky. But for a second, the forest disappears. The darkness becomes dust. The cold becomes heat. Ghost's blood becomes a different weight on a different pair of hands. And I am sitting in the back of an armored vehicle, watching the compound shrink through the rear window. Fareed, his boy. The boy's hand on his father's shirt, growing smaller. 14 years old and vanishing into a distance I chose. I left once. I'm doing it again. Ghost pushes his nose harder into my palm. His tail moves once on the ground. A weak sweep through the leaves, not asking for help, telling me he is still here. The language is simple. Weight and warmth and the steady pressure of one body against another. He has made his choice. He made it 7 years ago on a tarmac in Germany when Danny was under a flag and Ghost's handler was gone and a man he barely knew said, "Come." And he came. Okay. I pull the pack onto my shoulders. I slide my arms under Ghost's body. 80 pounds. His legs hang loose. His head rests against my chest. His breathing is shallow but even. I stand. My left knee grinds. My right shoulder screams. I do not care. I have carried heavier things. I have carried guilt that weighs more than any body. But none of it has ever looked up at me and chosen to stay. The fire tower is 1 mile north. The forest is dark. The men are behind me and beside me and ahead of me, and somewhere in the trees a flashlight is sweeping for 2 targets and finding neither. And I am walking uphill through October cold with a bleeding dog against my chest and the sound of a promise I broke echoing in a skull that has never learned how to let it go. 1 mile. I walk. The fire tower stands against the sky like something forgotten on purpose. Steel frame, rust-streaked, bolted to granite that has been here since before anyone thought to name the forest around it. The stairs switch back up 4 flights to a platform enclosed on 3 sides by plywood panels, warped and split and patched with tin sheeting and whatever faith held them together through 40 Michigan winters. The 4th side is open, facing south, and from it I can see the forest rolling away in every direction, dark and vast and indifferent, under a moon that has gone thin and pale and is asking nothing of anyone. I carry Ghost up the stairs, 80 pounds. His body is limp against my chest, but his breathing is steady. The wound on his shoulder presses against my jacket, and the warmth of it soaks through the fabric in a slow bloom that smells like iron and gauze, and the specific chemistry of a dog who is hurt and alive, and refusing to be anything less than both. His eyes are open. He watches the treetops pass below us as we climb. His head turns slightly, tracking the canopy with the focused attention of an animal who does not stop gathering intelligence, even when intelligence cannot help him. Each flight groans under our combined weight. The steel protests on the turns, the bolts singing in their brackets, the handrail vibrating under my grip. My knee grinds on every switchback. The cartilage there has been ground down by 20 years of rucking and fast roping and jumping out of aircraft and landing on surfaces that were never designed to receive a man at that velocity. My right shoulder has stopped hurting, which means it has moved past pain into that numb territory where the body decides to stop filing reports because the man in charge is not going to act on them anyway. The platform is 10 feet by 12. Plywood floor, warped at the edges, but solid in the center. A rusted railing on 3 sides, chest high, bent outward by decades of wind. The open south side is a gap where a door once hung and fell and rotted into the underbrush 2 stories below. I set Ghost down on the tarp from my pack and kneel beside him and check the wound. The hemostatic agent has done its work. The bleeding has clotted beneath the gauze. The dressing is dark, crusted at the edges, but not saturated. The flesh beneath is swollen and hot. He will need sutures, antibiotics, clean water and rest, and a place that does not require him to be brave. He will not get any of those things tonight. His tail moves once against the tarp. A single thump. Weak, deliberate, not asking for comfort, confirming presence. I know. I work. Triple arms first. Paracord stretched across both stairwell approaches at ankle height, tied to empty MRE pouches filled with gravel from the platform cracks. Anyone climbing will kick the cord and spill the gravel, and the sound will travel up 4 flights of steel stairwell and reach me before the man who made it reaches the second landing. Simple, low-tech, the kind of alarm that requires no battery and no maintenance, and no faith in anything except gravity and the fact that human beings are worse at being quiet than they believe. Observation angles next. I glass the approaches with the binoculars, moving from south to east to west to north. South, the ridge we came from, the drainage below it, the dark tree line where 6 men are searching for a man and a dog and a reason to call this a clean operation. The brush fire route is visible as a pale scar in the scrub 200 meters below. East, open ground, a logged clearing from decades ago, grown back in alder and birch, thin cover, clean sightlines. West, the ravine and the creek, darker, harder to read from altitude, but acoustically live. Sound carries up the rock face here. I can hear the water. I can hear the wind bending through the drainage. If a man walks through that creek bed, I will hear his boots on the stone before he clears the ravine. North. More forest, thicker, older, nothing behind me that I need to fear tonight. Two approach routes from the south. Both climb exposed granite for the final 100 meters. No tree cover on the upper slope. Anyone advancing up that rock will be visible for a full minute before reaching the stairs. This is where I hold. I glass the southern tree line one more time. Nothing moves. The forest at night is a study in patience. Everything waits. But near the base of the drainage, where the creek crosses the old logging road, I catch a reflection. Brief. Glass or lens. Someone is looking north through optics. Someone who does not know I am looking back. Ghost lifts his head. His nose works the air coming up from the valley, drawn by the thermal differential between the cold summit granite and the warmer forest below. He does not growl. His body has given everything tonight. But his eyes track south, and one ear rotates and locks, and I know he is still reading the dark, because reading the dark is what he does, what he has always done. His contribution to a partnership that began on a tarmac in Germany and has not paused since. Even now, even bleeding on a plywood floor at the top of a rusted tower in the middle of a forest that is trying to decide whether to kill us or forget us. On the wire where his shoulder caught, I found blood that was not his. Darker, already dried when I examined the cable with my headlamp. One of their operators hit the same wire. Maybe the man who set it, moving too fast in the dark, catching his own trap on the return. Or maybe a second man, following a trail that suddenly ended in steel. Either way, they are down a man, operating at 5 instead of 6. One element running short, or one man spending his attention on a wound instead of on me. Small advantage. The first real advantage I have had since I opened a van door 3 nights ago and stepped into a math problem I did not know was counting. I sit beside Ghost, my back against the railing, his body against my leg. I rest my hand flat on his rib cage, feel it rise, fall, rise. The oldest rhythm a man can touch with his own hands. The simplest proof that something near him is still alive. The first light hits the canopy below. Through it, moving in pairs, they come. 2 elements. South approach, offset east and west. They move through the scrub at the base of the granite shelf, using the tree line for concealment, pausing every 30 meters to glass the tower with optics that catch the early light and throw it back at me in small, bright flashes. Professional. Patient. Not rushing. They know where I am. They have decided I am not leaving. Now they are deciding how to come up and get me. I count through the binoculars. 4 men visible, 2 from the east element, crossing the clearing in a low crouch, using birch trunks and scrub brush for cover in a leapfrog pattern. One moves, the other holds and watches. Then they switch. 2 more on the drainage trail to the west, moving slower, flanking along the creek bed, using the ravine walls to mask their approach. I lose them when they enter the shadow under the rock face, and pick them up again when they emerge 50 meters closer. The other two are not visible. Held in reserve, maybe, or circling north through the heavier timber, looking for a back route to the tower stairs I have not considered. I have considered all of them. There are only two. Both of them are alarmed. The man from the SUV is nowhere in my glass, but I feel his presence in the spacing between the elements, in the coordinated pauses, in the timing. These men are executing a plan. Someone drew it. Someone briefed it. Someone is watching. The east alarm triggers. One man on the stairs, ground level. His boot caught the paracord. The MRE pouch drops and spills gravel across the metal landing. The sound travels up 4 flights of hollow steel, ringing and sharp, amplified by the frame into something louder than it has any right to be. Ghost's ears snap forward. His body tries to rise. The muscles in his legs tighten, and his front paws scrabble at the tarp, and his hindquarters push upward for 1 second before his shoulder gives and he folds back down. A whine comes through his teeth, short, clipped, immediately swallowed. 7 years of training, cramming the sound back down into the place where he has learned to store everything that hurts. Bleib. Stay down. He stays. His eyes are locked on the stair opening. His lips are pulled back. Every fiber in his body is fighting the wound and the exhaustion and the cold and the instinct that says, get up, get between your handler and the threat. Do what you were born for. He cannot stand. He is trying anyway, and the effort of it, the hopeless, stubborn, magnificent effort, makes my chest tight in a way that has nothing to do with the cold. I hear the man on the stairs retreat. His boots descend fast, ringing on each flight. The alarm worked. He announced himself, and now he knows the stairwell is rigged, and he will not try it again without a different plan. Time bought. Not much, but enough to measure. From below, voices, low, conferring. I catch fragments through the wind. Perimeter traps, and stairwell secured. And then a different voice, calmer, flatter. The voice of a man who does not raise his volume because volume is for men who have lost control of the conversation. Bring up the package. A new sound, an engine, not a vehicle, smaller, higher frequency, a mechanical whine that climbs in pitch and steadies. Drone. The Pelican case from the second vehicle. Commercial quad platform modified with a FLIR thermal sensor. It will climb to 200 feet, orbit the tower, and broadcast every heat signature on this platform to every operator on the ground in real time. My position, my dog's position, my movements, my options, all of it rendered in infrared and delivered to the man who decides. The moment that drone reaches altitude, I am visible, fully and permanently visible. No cover, no concealment, no gap between what I do and what they see. 3 minutes, maybe less. I look east. The clearing below the tower is dry. 6 weeks without significant rain. Dead leaves, dead grass, dried fern, all layered 3 inches thick across the granite approach. A carpet of fuel that has been baking since August, waiting for a spark with the patient readiness of tinder that does not know it is tinder until someone teaches it. I pull the flare gun from my pack, Single shot. 12-gauge signal flare. Burn time 4 seconds. Visible for 3 miles in clear air. It is not a weapon. It is a tool. The distinction depends entirely on intent. And my intent right now is smoke. I aim east, 45 degrees down, into the clearing where the scrub is thickest and the deadfall has gone brown and brittle and is begging for a reason to burn. The flare hits the brush pile at the clearing's edge and ignites. Not an explosion, a bloom. Orange light expanding outward through dead vegetation, climbing the fern, catching the wind and running east and south along the scrub line in a rolling front that accelerates as it finds fuel. Smoke rises immediately, thick, white, billowing upward through the canopy in a column that mushrooms at the treetop level and spreads. Within 30 seconds, the east approach is a wall of white smoke. Within 60, the column has risen high enough to meet the drone's altitude and flood its visual camera with particulate. The FLIR sensor reads the fire as a saturated heat mass, a bright smear that drowns every other thermal signature into noise. The drone circles, blind, confused. A $50,000 machine rendered useless by a $6 flare and the oldest weapon in human history. Below, the operators react. The east element pulls back from the clearing's edge. The west element holds position in the drainage, unsure. The drone buzzes overhead, circling, trying to reacquire through the smoke and failing. Confusion, disorder. But fire is a tool with a short shelf life in wet forest. The ground is damp beneath the surface tinder. The brush will burn out in minutes. The smoke will thin. The drone will reacquire. I have bought time. Not much. Enough to change one thing. Ghost. From the platform floor behind me, a growl so thin and strained it sounds like it is being pulled from a place that should have been empty an hour ago. His head is turned north, not south toward the smoke and the fire and the voices. North, the blind side. I spin, a figure on the north stair, 3 flights up and climbing fast, using the smoke as cover, moving while every eye on the ground points east. Dark clothing, balaclava, weapon drawn. Boots ringing on the steel in a rhythm that says urgency. He came up the back while the front burned. Classic. Textbook. Exactly what I would have done. Except Ghost heard him. Stop! He does not stop. He climbs another flight. 2 flights from the platform now. His breathing is hard and controlled. I can see the shape of him through the stair gap. Broad shoulders, right hand low, weapon indexed along his thigh. Left hand on the railing, pulling himself up. I said stop! He reaches the landing below the platform, 5 feet from the opening. 1 more flight. I stand between him and Ghost, with the spent flare gun in one hand and the K-bar in the other, and nothing between us except air and the decision he is about to make. Ghost moves. I do not command it. I do not signal. He drags himself across the tarp on his front legs. His back legs follow. His wounded shoulder leaves a dark, wet trail on the plywood. He reaches the stair opening and places his body across it, and bares his teeth, and the sound that comes out of him is not a growl, and not a bark, and not anything that belongs to training or obedience or command. It is older than all of that. It is the sound an animal makes when the math is finished, and the answer is no. No, you will not pass. No, you will not reach him. No, this is where it ends, because I am here, and I have decided, and my decision does not require your agreement. The operator stops. One flight below, he looks at the dog, bleeding, shaking, positioned across the opening, with his teeth bared and his body trembling, and nothing behind the display except 70 pounds of loyalty and the absolute refusal to quit. The operator looks at me. His eyes above the balaclava are steady, professional, calculating. He keys his radio. He's Special Forces, disabled the drone with a brush fire, set perimeter alarms on both stairwells. He's dug in. And his dog is still operational. Still operational. The military phrase for a system that should have failed and hasn't. The phrase we use for equipment that exceeds its design parameters. The phrase I have never heard applied to a dog before, and hope I never hear again, because the weight of it is more than language was built to carry. A voice comes back through the radio, calm, cold, distant. Hold position. I'm coming up. He comes up, alone, slow, each step deliberate, spaced, measured for cadence. He wants to be heard. Being heard is a choice, and choices are demonstrations of power. And power is the only language this man speaks with any fluency. He reaches the platform, steps past the operator on the landing without acknowledging him, steps into the open air above the forest, and stands there, framed by smoke and early light. Warren Lusk, mid-40s, clean-shaven. His jacket is still fitted, still unwrinkled, still absurd against the charred smell and the rusted steel and the blood on the plywood floor. His hands are empty, no weapon visible. His posture is straight, and his face is composed, with the deliberate stillness of a man who has rehearsed authority until it has replaced personality entirely. Mr. Merritt. He knows my name. That should disturb me more than it does. But I have been known and unknown and known again so many times in 20 years of operating under names that were not always mine that the cycle has worn smooth. He ran a search, found what remains of a man who stopped filing taxes 3 years ago. Enough to build a file, not enough to build a person. Lusk. His eyebrows lift a fraction. He did not expect me to return the identification. Nora described the ridgeline field structure, and the name was in one of the documents her district office scrubbed before she could copy it. A guess, an accurate one, and accuracy right now is the only weapon I have left. He looks at Ghost. The dog is on his side, breathing hard, gauze dark across his shoulder, teeth still bared, positioned between us. Lusk's gaze moves across the animal, assesses, catalogs, moves on. He does not linger on the wound or the posture or the loyalty behind either. He sees an obstacle. He categorizes it. He files it under manageable. I watch him do it, and I understand him completely. A man who can look at a bleeding dog defending its handler and see only a variable in an equation is a man who has been solving that equation his whole life. Living things reduced to inputs. Loyalty reduced to inefficiency. Suffering reduced to cost. I have met this man before, in uniform, in conference rooms, in secure facilities where the PowerPoint slides used words that meant one thing in the dictionary and something different in the room. He is the man who signs the order and leaves before the order arrives. You could have stayed invisible, he says. His voice is conversational, rehearsed, reasonable. 3 years, no contact, no footprint. You were a ghost in these woods, and nobody would have looked for you. Nobody would have cared. That's the problem. He tilts his head, half an inch. Nobody caring. That's the problem. I'm offering you a clean exit, Lusk says. He clasps his hands behind his back, the posture of a briefing officer. Walk away, take the dog, forget what you found. Go deeper into whatever solitude you've constructed for yourself, and let us relocate and finish this quietly. You never see us again. Everyone returns to their preferred version of nothing. And the hardware you're running through these woods moves to another route, another forest, another county where someone like you is not paying attention. So it continues. It continues regardless. That's the part you're not calculating. One man on a fire tower with a wounded dog and a signal flare does not alter the trajectory of an operation that has been running for 3 years, across 4 states, with institutional backing and client contracts that are older than your enlistment. You're right. One man doesn't alter it. But one man decides whether he's part of it. Lusk's expression does not change, but something behind it shifts. The polish dims. The performance stutters for a quarter second, and in that gap, I see what lives underneath. Not anger, not fear, irritation. The specific frustration of a man whose algebra has failed because the variable in front of him has refused to behave like a number. You have no leverage, no vehicle, no communication, no support. You have a wounded animal and a dying fire, and the clock is running out. The only reason this conversation is still civil is my professional preference for efficiency over escalation. I tried the efficient thing. I tried walking away, keeping my head down, telling myself that what I didn't see wasn't mine to carry. I tried that for 3 years. It doesn't work. We both hear it. At the same moment, not from the south, from the west. The county road, more than one engine moving fast. And through the engine noise, threading up through the trees and the thinning smoke and the cold October air. Nora. She made it. Through the creek drainage in the dark, past the operator who separated us, west through terrain she barely knew, running on adrenaline and anger and the stubborn conviction that the system she worked for could still be made to function if someone put the right information in front of the right person at the right time. She reached radio range. She made the call. The 48-hour window did not matter. She did not wait for it. Lusk's face changes. The composure fractures. Not panic. Recalculation. Rapid and clinical. His eyes move from me to the stairwell, to the forest, to the approaching sirens. His jaw works. His hands unclasp. He is running the math. Time to the trailhead. Time to the vehicles. Time to evaporate. And the answer is the same answer it has always been for men who build their operations on the assumption that nobody is watching. There is no time, because someone was watching. This isn't over, he says, quietly. The first quiet thing he has said. For you it is. He holds my gaze, searches it for something. Doubt, maybe. Regret. The negotiating surface he needs to make one more offer. He does not find it. His eyes drop to Ghost. The dog stares back from the floor, still bleeding, still bared, still positioned between us with a certainty that has never required explanation or reinforcement, or reward. Ghost does not guard me because I trained him to. He guards me because he decided to. And the decision was made once, years ago, and has not been revisited since. Lusk turns, descends the stairs. His boots ring on the metal. Even now, measured. Even now, controlled. The operator on the landing follows. I kneel beside Ghost. His breathing is ragged. His tail moves against the tarp. 2 weak thumps. Then a third, slower, as if the effort of a third was a decision he almost did not make, and then made anyway. You did it. His nose pushes against my wrist. Cold, wet, alive. Below, the sirens reach the trailhead. Doors slam. Voices carry up the ridge, distorted by distance but recognizable as authority, as procedure, as the organized noise of a system arriving late to a place it should have been watching all along. Maybe it failed me. Maybe I failed it. Maybe the question does not have a single answer, and the truth is that systems do not save people. People save people. And sometimes the person who saves you is a woman with a badge you did not trust, and a dog who never asked whether you deserved him. I sit on the platform floor. Ghost's body settles against my leg. The smoke thins. The fire dies. Below us, men in uniform are telling men without markings to stop, and they are stopping. And the forest fills with human voices for the first time in my 3 years on this ridge. People coming. I hadn't heard that sound in 3 years. And for the first time, I didn't want to run from it. They come up the tower in pairs. County sheriff first. 2 deputies with ballistic vests and flashlights, and the cautious efficiency of men responding to a situation that has exceeded their Tuesday morning by a considerable margin. Then, USFS officers in green, Nora's people, carrying evidence bags and cameras and the measured seriousness of federal employees who have been told something large is happening on land they are responsible for. Then a paramedic, young, mid-20s. He carries his kit in both hands with the precise nervousness of someone who was not expecting to spend his morning climbing a fire tower in the middle of a forest to treat a German shepherd for a steel cable wound. Lusk is cuffed at the base of the ridge. I can see him from the platform, standing beside the dark SUV, with his hands behind his back and his face emptied of everything except the specific blankness of a man who has decided that silence is his last remaining professional asset. 3 of his operators kneel nearby, flex-cuffed, silent, faces down. The 4th sits against a tree, with a medic working on his arm. The wire. The same wire that caught Ghost caught him too. And the symmetry of it settles in my chest without explanation or satisfaction. The 5th and 6th were picked up on the county road, heading south, matching the plate numbers Nora radioed at 0430. Nora appears at the top of the stairwell, mud to her knees, scratches on both hands from the creek bed, a long scrape across her jaw where a branch caught her in the dark. Her hair has come loose and hangs across her face, and she pushes it back with a hand that trembles with the specific vibration of a body releasing 10 hours of adrenaline all at once. She looks at Ghost first, then at me, then at the platform, the spent flare gun, the paracord trip lines, the blood trail on the plywood where Ghost dragged himself to the stairwell. She reads all of it in 3 seconds. You made it. You made the call. I made it at 0430. Took them time to assemble. Small county, 1 dispatcher. I had to explain the situation 3 times before the supervisor authorized a response unit. The manifest serial numbers helped, and the name Ridgeline Solutions. Someone at the district level had seen it before, in a memo they weren't supposed to have received. You ran 4 miles in the dark, through terrain you didn't know. 3.5. I measured it on the way back. Something in her face, not a smile, closer to the expression a person makes when the situation has been so far beyond reasonable that the only possible response is precision. 3.5 miles. Measured. She looks at Ghost again. How is he? Alive. The paramedic kneels beside Ghost. Young hands, gentle, competent in the careful, deliberate manner of someone who trained on human patients and is adapting in real time to a patient who cannot describe his symptoms and does not understand why a stranger is touching his wound. He cuts the gauze I applied 6 hours ago in the dark with shaking hands and examines what is beneath. Cleans it with saline from a squeeze bottle, irrigates, examines the depth, applies fresh hemostatic dressing, and begins suturing with a curved needle and the focused, unhurried precision of someone who understands that the creature beneath his hands has earned better than speed. Ghost lies still. His eyes follow the medic's hands, not trusting, not resisting, evaluating. He is deciding whether this new pair of hands belongs to someone who has been authorized to touch him. And the evaluation process involves scent and pressure and the 100 small signals that pass between a dog's nervous system and the world around it. After 30 seconds, his body relaxes. 1 degree. His breathing slows. The medic has passed whatever test Ghost administers, and the passing of it is a gift the young man will probably never understand. He's a tough dog, the medic says without looking up. He's the toughest person I know. The medic's hands pause. He glances at me, registers the word. Person. Not dog. Not animal. not companion or pet or working dog or any of the other words that create distance between a man and the creature he has spent 7 years learning to understand. Person. The word that erases the distance. He does not correct me. He nods once, small, and returns to his sutures. Nora briefs the USFS supervisor at the base of the tower. I hear fragments carried up by the wind. Manifest, motion sensor, staging area on federal land, ridgeline solutions, coordinated transport of restricted military surplus through national forest access roads, 4 vehicles identified, 6 operators detained, 1 field coordinator in custody. She delivers the brief with the flat, exhaustive precision of a woman who has been writing this report in her head for 2 months and is delivering it now to someone who will finally listen. I stand at the edge of the platform. The forest stretches south. The smoke has cleared. The brush fire has burned a 1/4-acre circle into the east clearing and stopped at the granite where nothing grows. The sun is up. October light. Thin and clean and honest. Below, Nora finishes her brief, shakes the supervisor's hand, walks to the base of the tower, looks up, cups her hands around her mouth. There's a cabin. Forest Service property. South end of the ridge. Been empty 2 years. Close enough to Iron Falls for the dog to see a vet when he needs one. I do not answer. Behind me, Ghost's tail thumps the tarp. Once, twice. His vote, cast without deliberation. He deserved more than what I'd been giving him. We both did. Morning. My cabin. The one I built. Lumber I felled and milled and shaped into walls that kept the weather out and everything else in. 3 years of silence inside these walls. 3 years of a door that closed and a man who closed it, and a dog who lay beside it and waited for whatever came next without asking what it would be. I sit on the step. The air is cold. My breath fogs and dissolves. The maple beside the porch has dropped half its leaves overnight, and the ground beneath it is covered in yellow and red and brown. No pattern, no arrangement, just color falling where gravity takes it, without apology or design. Ghost eases himself down beside me, careful with his shoulder. The bandage is clean, changed this morning with supplies the paramedic left in a brown paper bag, along with written instructions and a phone number for the veterinary clinic in Iron Falls. His movements are stiff but deliberate. He chooses his position with the slow precision of an old soldier selecting his seat in a room. Left side against my leg, wounded shoulder outward, facing the sun. He has decided that the sun is good for it, or he has decided that the warmth feels better than the shade, and either way, the decision is his, and I will not interfere with it. His tail taps the wooden step, slow, steady, not excitement, something that does not require a name. He leans his weight into me and exhales, long, full, complete. A breath that empties him entirely and fills him back up with whatever it is that dogs carry in place of regret. In my jacket pocket, a piece of paper folded twice. Nora's handwriting. Small and clear, the letters formed with the care of someone who understands that written words carry weight because they can be kept. An address for a Forest Service cabin on the south end of the ridge. Ruth Halsey's phone number, area code and all. And one line at the bottom, underlined once with a ruler or the edge of a card. Not everyone who wears a badge is the system. I read it, fold it along the same creases, put it back in my pocket where it sits beside the manifest page I took from a van 3 nights ago. 2 pieces of paper, one that dragged me out of hiding, one that is asking whether I want to stay out. The forest is the same. The cabin is the same. The ridge beyond the clearing, the drainage, the creek, the fire tower on the horizon, a dark framework against a sky that has gone clear and high and cold. All of it standing exactly where it stood 4 days ago, unchanged. The world does not rearrange itself around a man's decisions. It holds its shape. The rearranging happens inside, in the space between one breath and the next, where no one can see it, except a dog who has been watching for 7 years and has never once looked away. I think about Fareed. Not the leaving, not the guilt, not the promise I broke or the silence that followed. I think about what he said before the promise, the thing I have carried without knowing I carried it. You are not a bad man, Sergeant Merritt. You are a man in a bad situation. The difference matters. I did not believe him then. I am not sure I believe him now. But Ghost is beside me, bandaged and breathing, and leaning his 77 pounds against my leg, as if my leg is the only fixed point in his universe. And maybe belief is not what matters. Maybe what matters is closer to this: presence, showing up, staying in the room when the room is difficult. Ghost watches me. His eyes are brown and calm and patient. He does not know what I am deciding and does not need to know. He decided 7 years ago on a tarmac in Ramstein when Danny was under a flag and a stranger said, "Come," and he came. Every morning since has been the same decision, repeated without effort, without doubt, without the exhausting human need to evaluate whether the decision still makes sense. Where you go. The complete vocabulary. The full extent of his contract with the world. I stand up. My knee grinds. The scar on my forearm catches the October light and looks white against skin that has gone pale under 3 years of tree cover. I am 42 years old. I have served 20 years and deployed 7 times and earned a Green Beret at 23 and lost it at 38. Not to the enemy, but to a system that valued its own comfort more than its own promises. I have lost a man named Danny, who gave me his dog, and a man named Fareed, who gave me his trust and 14 months of sleep, and the ability to walk into a government building without feeling my pulse climb. I have Ghost. He is 7 years old. He is wounded and stubborn and gray around the muzzle and slower on the hills than he used to be. And he has never, in 7 years, turned his back on me. Not once. I look south, down the dirt road, through the hardwoods, toward Iron Falls. I do not step off the porch, not yet, but my weight shifts forward. My feet are under me, and my eyes stay on the road. The road that leads out. The road I have not looked at in 3 years, because looking at it meant admitting I might want what was on the other end of it. Ghost stands up beside me, stiff, favoring his shoulder. He does not look at the forest. He does not look at the cabin, or the ridge, or the fire tower, or any of the places we have been hiding. He looks at me. Then he leans into my leg, not asking, not testing, not performing. Ghost leaned into my leg. I let him.